A lot of people have been requesting I make fillet videos, so I'm going to add my own twist. I'll make another video on how to fillet quickly, but today I'm going to show a slower, more methodical way that I'd recommend for people with little filleting experience, which should save them time overall by reducing the mistakes they make and making the cuts simpler. I'm going to fillet a walleye. First I'm going to fillet one extra slow, show you all the steps involved in this beginner method, and I'm going to fillet one at normal pace. Two things I'd recommend you have for this, and it doesn't have to be the same as mine: sharp fillet knife and some sort of surface where the fish doesn't slide around very easily. Alright, let's get started here. First cut I make is right behind the gill plate here. Same cut with almost every standard filleting method. You cut in an angle about a 45 back, and you cut until you hit the vertebrae here. And I take the knife point, I'll curve it around, and this is the important part. This is where it starts to become a beginner method instead of a fast method. I'll get on my knees and I'll get it eye level with this backbone here, because this is easy to screw up if you don't have a lot of experience with it, even though the fish is still straight. And I'll just run this knife real shallow right above the top fin here. This fin, just above it. And I won't go in very deep when I do this, as a beginner method. I'd stay shallow. So it'll be a lot simpler that way, easier to not screw up. We'll go deeper in a few minutes. Right around when I get to the second fin here, I'll go straight through. Make sure when you go straight through you keep the knife pressured down so that you feel the vertebrae. You feel it click right past the vertebrae as you go through. The reason we can't do this up here is because there's a row of ribs and it stops around right here. And they'll arc through the meat, so we have to cut around them in a moment. But down here there's no ribs, so I'll keep a slight downward angle, maybe 5 or 10 degrees, as I cut along the vertebrae here. And still I'll keep my knife just above the fin, just like I did over here. I'll cut straight to the tail and I'll leave it on. I'll leave the skin connected. Alright. Next thing I'll do is I'll flip it over, which takes a little bit of time, a few seconds, but it'll help you keep the fish straight, and it'll help you in the long run if you're a beginner. I'll make that same cut again right there, curve the knife around, and I'll just start cutting real shallow, only just using the knife tip, and I'll just cut along the fin there. I do this much differently when I fillet these fish, but this is what I found to be a much easier way when I was a beginner. It helped me screw up a lot less. I'll make that same cut straight towards the tail. So right now we have two fillets on this walleye. They're cut the same way. They're cut off around the tail and they're just connected by the ribs on each side. So, next thing I'll do is I'll start peeling back the meat along the back here. I'll make shallow cuts, but I'll keep these cuts at a downward angle, like 5 or 10 degrees, pressing into the bones here. I'll just make some swipes. Right around here, around the lateral line, you're going to meet the ribs, which are going to get in the way of your knife. They're going to arc out. So you're going to have to, instead of angling the knife down 5 or 10 degrees, you're going to have to start curving it back up. And as you curve it back up along these ribs, there's going to be a row of pin bones, which are extra fine bones, and we're going to cut through those and cut them out later. But we don't want to cut through the ribs. So basically we want to make an arc with the knife, hear some clicking, and then come back down and cut the fillet off. So I'll show you here. And we want to keep peeling the whole time. You can hear some very light clicking there. But you still want to see these ribs here. Right around here, the ribs are gonna end. And then we want to leave that on. We leave it on for support on this side. This is probably the hardest part. Every time when I was a beginner, if I was going to screw up, this is where I would screw up. If I remember right. It's been a while since I've done it this way, but this is the way I always used to do it. It helped me so much. So I'll just peel away the meat right there. And then we're going to start to cut through the pin bones. So instead of keeping the knife flat along these bones, or pointed down into them ever so slightly, I'm going to start curving it back up and around. I'm just going to make an arc with the knife, like this. And in the process, I'm going to cut through those really light pin bones, but I'm not going to cut through the ribs. That's the whole point. If you cut through the ribs, it's going to waste a lot of time, because then you have to painstakingly cut them back out later without cutting all the meat off. It should be a lot quicker. I'm going extra slow here to describe everything. I'll do one quicker in a moment, but overall this is a slower method, but it should save time for someone who's just starting to fillet. This is where having a really sharp knife comes in handy, because it's harder to apply the right type of pressure when you do the backside, and that's why it's so easy to screw up. So I just took it straight down, and this is where the pin bones are right here, and then I curved up around the ribs until I was through them. All right, next thing, cut through the belly there, do the same thing on the other side. See all this flipping in the beginner method? That's what takes a little bit extra time. There's a bit of guts there, so I left that on. Next thing I'll do on this board, if you have a long enough board, you don't have to do this, but I'll reclip it up here, or you can just break this off if you don't want this carcass hanging off here. Lay that fillet nice and flat like that. Start right around there. I'll dig down until I hit the skin, and then I'll just keep a, I don't know, maybe 10-degree downward angle into the skin here. You don't want to dig too much. If you ever feel yourself stopping as you go, and you're just sawing back and forth, you want to stop because you're digging too much into the skin. And when you do that, you want to rise back up a little bit and then keep going. You just want to go nice and gently. It shouldn't be hard to cut if you have a sharp knife. You slide on through and you should see all this white stuff. That means you did a good job. It means it's nice and tight to the skin. One last thing you do with your fillet is that row of pin bones that we cut through is right here. You can hear them. They're pointing up vertically through the meat. They're perpendicular to the ribs, so they're going to stand up in the meat after we cut them out. You can feel them with your finger. You just want to cut them out. They're only there for the length of the ribs, so they're only down to here. Just cut a little strip out. There you go, boneless walleye fillet. Do the other side here. You can flip this walleye around, reclip it if you feel like it. Just doing the same thing all over again. thin strip of bones there. You got another boneless walleye fillet. And that's it. I'm gonna fillet one more here. Not fast, just a normal speed. Try and give you a realistic expectation of what this method takes. One continuous cut, flip. It's really the flipping that takes all the time in this beginner method. A lot of the extra time. I don't do that when I normally fillet them anymore. I do it a quicker way. I'll show you in a different video, like I said. So, you know, it takes a couple more minutes or another minute or whatever, but probably a couple more minutes, but it still saves time, I think, for someone who's just starting filleting. So it makes all these cuts just continuous straight lines. That's really the reasoning behind this. When you do that, when you eliminate all the curved cuts, as a beginner, at least I found, you tend to screw up a lot less. And whenever you screw up, you get a bunch of bones in the meat or a bunch of skin left on the meat, whatever your problem is, it takes more time than the difference between the fast and the slower, more methodical beginner method. Oops. Alright, I didn't mean to cut through the bottom there. See, I'm still got the fast method in my head, but that's okay. Just if you screw up like that, just leave it on that side. The main point is to keep it on during these shallow cuts. It takes more time than the difference between the two methods to clean up is the reason it'll save you time, I think. There we go. The main thing is to have that support for the shallow cut right here and then through this. That's the biggest, most important thing. Now let's do the cheeks quick. There's a cheek. Start talking and I mix up the methods just a touch by one cut. There's another cheek. Alright. Let me take this guy, clip him somewhere down here. Just take this off. Nice and clean. I'll do the same thing to the other side. You don't want to dig too deep, but you want to keep a nice steady pressure, just a little bit into that skin. It's nice to keep your knife a constant sharpness, not just sharp, but keep it the same sharpness all the time, or similar sharpness, because then when you apply the same pressure, you'll get the same result. That's what I found. Alright, that's a pretty perfect looking fillet. Got that little pin bones right there. Cut it on out. All the way. Alright. There's your pin bones. You don't want those. Some people say they cook out. I find they do sometimes and sometimes they don't. They're really thin little bones. If you're confused where they are exactly, you can always just run your finger along and feel them. Because they stand up in the meat. They're perpendicular to the ribs. That's why we cut through them. Alright, 2 fillets and 2 cheeks. we go.